On the strength of season one of Full Swing, the Netflix docuseries on the PGA Tour, we are within just a couple of days of launching season two. And it drops on Wednesday of the Arnold Palmer Invitational. And everyone involved with it is pretty excited about it. Golf fans are pretty stoked about what season two will have in store. And we've got the man who can shed a little light on that. Chad Mumm from Vox Media is the executive producer of Full Swing and kind enough to hop in and hang with us. Chad, thanks for some time. What's happening? How you doing out there in LA?
Yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait. We've been working on this thing for the last year. I can't wait for the world to see it. Couldn't be more proud of what we cooked up for everybody. So, fire up Netflix March 6th. It's there for you, ready to binge. So I'm happy to tell you all about it.
Was there any feedback or self-critique that you guys as a production unit gave yourselves after season one that sort of gave you some new ideas, new openings, new avenues about how you might proceed going into the second season?
Anytime you make one of these shows, season one is a little bit of like you're figuring out the world, you're figuring out how to make a series. Listen, I'm a hardcore golf fan. I mean, I have Tillinghast on my sweater here. And I listened to all the podcasts. I heard all the feedback about how we explain the cut in every episode, maybe one too many times. And one of the great things about a season two is we don't have to work as hard to establish the world, and season two of Full Swing starts off right at the end, basically right where we leave you at the end of season one. So you get thrown right into the action. Rory McIlroy coming off of winning the FedEx Cup, tour champion, number one player in the world. We jump right back in with Rory kind of at his moment of like maximum heat, and he's at the top of the mountain, and we follow his story as he goes into the beginning of the year and misses the cut at the Masters, and then watches his, as you will see, budding arch rival win the PGA Championship in Brooks Koepka, and it just throws you right into the action without having to explain what a par is. We don't have to spend as much time even introducing cast members. We created this cool world of what life is like on the PGA Tour. We introduced a bunch of great characters in season one. We can just throw you right into the action with them for season two. So I think our big goal, first and foremost, was like no sophomore slump. Sophomore album, it had to hit it out of the park. So we had a really high bar for ourselves and making sure we lived up to people's expectations from season one. I think we hit that bar and then some. The second goal was really just to how do we tell stories that are just more linear inherently? How do we create a show that propels you through the season? So you're going to see more cliffhangers in this season. There's more two-part episodes that tie together and pick up the second the other one ends. So I think the whole show is inherently just like more dramatic. It's more bingeable. And we have this amazing thing called the Ryder Cup that we can use as a device that ends up guiding so much of the drama throughout the whole season. And you get to kind of culminate the whole show in this head-to-head battle, which, as you know, in golf, like we don't get all the time. We can go into an event with 10 or 12 people being followed by our cameras and, in a 150 person, 50 guy field. We got to get lucky for someone to be in the final group together. And the Ryder Cup was great for us because it was just one team was going to win, one team was going to lose. And you never get that kind of direct 1v1 drama as a Sunday singles matches as you do at the Ryder Cup. So, everything like the stars aligned for us. I can't wait for you guys to see it.
I think your explanation makes a lot of sense as it relates to the natural evolution of a series in any realm, in any space. There might be some broad brush to educate viewers in season one and then a little more refinement in season two. In terms of the viewership and the streams, Chad, I mean, you guys have to be thrilled with the 53 million streams between the debut of season one in February through June. Kind of outperformed expectations, would you say?
Yeah, I think everybody, was shocked at how broadly the show is accepted by fans kind of just great storytelling all over the world. I mean, I obviously poured my heart and soul, and our entire team sort of poured everything we had into season one, making something great. How do we make golf accessible to people? How do we suck people into these human stories? How do we humanize these athletes and give them like moments of really big payoff? And I do think in hindsight, also golf just it's a great canvas for these kinds of storytelling because it's such an individual sport. And if you can get behind the curtain with these athletes and with their families and with their team, you really can humanize them in a way that's harder to do when you're surrounded by the infrastructure of like an NFL team or even like an F1 team. We have amazing access to these guys and and their families, and they're just like there for us. We don't have to work through some comms team. We don't have to, we're not being chased by PR people. It's just like us and the cameras and them. And I think that humanity and the fact that when they get out there on the golf course, it's really just on them. There's no place to hide. It just makes for great storytelling canvas.
The golf audience is a curious contingency to kind of get your arms around, right? There's an entrenched core audience that's kind of been involved in the game for a long time. There's also a young and newer and fresher emerging set of eyeballs that I know the PGA Tour is really focused on. Where do you guys land in that space, Chad, in terms of who you think Full Swing is ultimately going to be aimed at?
The goal is just to make a show that millions of people around the world fall in love with and want to spend their time with. I think, we don't necessarily think about our audience in that sort of micro niches. It's really like if we kind of have the assumption that if we do a good job and we show real access to these players, that the hardcore golf fans are going to find something to take away from the show. They're going to get an insight into these players that they have never seen before. And that's just by virtue of the access that we have. And then our job on top of that is to make a show for everybody else, like fans of just not just great sports stories, but just great human drama. And I think we were effective at tugging at some heartstrings in season one, and giving people some rushes of dopamine watching someone, or rushes of adrenaline even watching someone hit a pivotal shot at a pivotal moment. And I think we just want to build on that. And I think honestly, like the kind of stories that unfolded last year while we were making season two, it takes it up a notch. Honestly, the drama is so real and it's so visceral, and being able to live through a very disruptive year again on the PGA Tour, and then to have it all culminate in a head-to-head matchup in Rome, where you've seen all of our cast members and all the characters of the show and all their families trying all year to make this team, and then finally they have to kind of put up or shut up, and it's in Rome, and people are singing songs and chanting. It gives you this like great buildup across the whole season. And I think we, as I said, I think we did something really special with this season, and hopefully, everybody who watches it agrees.
You mentioned Rory a little bit earlier, Chad. He's the brightest star in the game, outside of Tiger, of course. We'll call Rory the brightest active, competitive star in the game. And he's one of the few players, I think, that has crossover appeal for folks who are watching outside of the professional golf realm. And he's the star of the show. He is the tip of the sport. He's the social conscience of the PGA Tour. He's all of that. He's a big deal to have involved. How critical was it? How meaningful was it for you and your team to have the full buy-in from Rory McIlroy?
Yeah, I mean, you can't even quantify it. And last season, we had Rory for the final episode, and he wasn't in the show until Monday at the Tour Championship at Eastlake. And we tried all year to kind of talk his team into having him come into season one. And I think, they were kind of the impression that, hey, he'll lean in for season two. We just kind of want to see what it's all about. And we didn't have an ending to season one. So I flew down to Atlanta on the Sunday night and just wandered around the Eastlake clubhouse until I ran into Rory and just kind of gave him the pitch of my life to say, like, hey, you got to jump in now, because if not, people aren't going to hear from you until 2024. And, to his credit, he said yes. And an hour later, he had a microphone on and was running around the clubhouse in the locker room, and then goes on to win. And his buy-in, I think, just only increased as he saw the response to the show. He told us an anecdote that I loved, where he and his wife were in New York for just a vacation and out to eat, and he gets recognized sometimes, but he said he was walking down the streets of New York and people kept coming up to him being like, "Oh, you're the Netflix guy." And he's like, first time I've ever been recognized, not for just being a pro golfer, but just because I was in a Netflix show. And he gets it. I mean, Rory's extremely smart, and I give him a ton of credit, because we filmed with him not at the highest point of his year, and the beginning of the season was tough. He missed the cut at the Masters. He felt like he didn't have what it took to go and beat Brooks at the PGA Championship, and you feel that frustration in the show. I mean, it's raw and real, and we have better access to Rory than I think anybody's ever had for a longer period of time. And then you get to see him kind of grind it out across the whole season, and then come back to Rome and sort of be the heart and soul of that European Ryder Cup team, and get it done in sort of historic fashion. It's a really great season long arc. And I think that, this season for Full Swing season two, I think people are going to get to know Rory in a totally different way. Whether you're a fan of his or not, I think you're going to have newfound respect for him as a human being, as a competitor. And I think there's going to be a lot of fun chatter about some of the stuff that we captured with Rory.
Chad, were there players involved in season two whose personalities and appeal and Q factor kind of left you guys thinking, oh boy, that was a pleasant surprise?
Yeah, I think the two that come to mind are Tom Kim and Keegan Bradley. Tom, obviously, super, super young superstar. I think, he's already won 3 times in the PGA Tour. people forget he's only 21 years old. I think, Ludwig Oberg is 24. I think, Nick Dunlap might be 23. I mean, people forget how young Tom Kim is and how long he's been playing pro golf. And, there's like an innocence to Tom as he finds himself kind of swimming with sharks, and he's playing practice rounds with Rory and Tiger and Jordan Spieth and Max Homa and Justin Thomas. And he's just found himself in this sort of A-list crew. And there's a sweetness to his point of view that I think we knew he was a great personality. I mean, we saw him at the President's Cup and we saw that energy and that fire, but really spending a whole season with Tom, it was one of my favorite stories to tell, because he's just got so much heart. And then in the moment of sort of maximum pressure, when he was tested at the Open Championship, when he injured his ankle, he stepped up in a big way. And, and there's a lot of superstars that just don't have that level of grit. And I think Tom proved a lot to us and to the world, and hopefully to the Netflix audience, about what it takes to really be a star. Keegan's another player who, when we started season one, Keegan was one of the first players we talked to. He's a huge fan of these kinds of shows. He told me he watches every single season of every episode of every Hard Knocks and, Drive to Survive and everything in between. He really loves these shows, and he wanted to be in. And we honestly told him he needed to wait for, season two. And so he leaned in and told us at the beginning of the year that the only thing that mattered to him was making that Ryder Cup team. And, he said, look, good or bad, you guys can have cameras with me all year long. I'm leaning in. And, to watch his journey and how close he got to being, that final pick and earning his way onto the team at first, and then hopefully waiting by the phone for a call from Captain Zach Johnson to say he's made it back to Rome. And when that call comes and the answer is no, is just it's this human and visceral and difficult scene to watch that you could possibly, I mean, it's not life or death, but it's heartbreaking stuff. And credit to Keegan for just owning it and leaning in. And if you're a fan of professional golf, you're going to become a huge fan of Keegan Bradley, because, I mean, talk about being a pro and being a great human being, a great dad and a great competitor. That Keegan blew us all away.
So the relationship between the PGA Tour and the Live Golf Tour is it's an unavoidable narrative, right? I mean, you just cannot ignore it. How did you guys tackle that without dwelling on it, but also not ignoring it? Did you lean into that conflict a little bit more in season two?
This show is about professional golf, I think, above and beyond. And, we have an amazing partnership with the PGA Tour. We also have a great partnership with all the other governing bodies in golf. And we had filmed, we were embedded with several players last year: Mito Pereira, Ian Poulter, Brooks Koepka, these guys, Dustin Johnson, who left for Live in the middle of the season. And, we felt like it'd be doing a disservice to our audience to ignore those guys and to pretend that, it never happened. And so, we continued to film with Dustin all year. So you'll see DJ in season two. And the moment of, I think that everybody is interested in seeing, is the events of June 6th, when the PGA Tour and the PIF announced their sort of framework agreement. It dropped like a bomb across the pro golf landscape. And we had cameras out with like several top 50 and top 10 players. We had a crew in Canada for the RBC Canadian Open, just filming something unrelated. Like, we had no idea it was coming either. And it as disruptive and kind of crazy that moment was, and honestly, there's still not a resolution to it. It makes for an amazing story to tell, because all of a sudden you have all of these players that you really have invested time with as a viewer that now have had their whole entire world flipped upside down, and nobody has any answers. I think last season, the slow drip of players, exiting, or the speculation, is Cam Smith going to leave after the British, is who's staying, who's going, that kind of slow drip. It was dramatic when somebody would leave, but it was also like, we'd seen that happen before. So there was not like that much surprise. And there was always like rumors before they left. The June 6th announcement was like a bomb being dropped, and nobody had any idea it was coming. And so when you have an event that affects literally everybody in professional golf, not just the tour players, but the Live players as well, like kind of everybody had questions and nobody had answers, to have the entire sport be rocked in one day, it just gives like this amazing macro narrative that we can, tell stories off of. And I think the access we had to that moment, and the support that we had and the trust that we had from the PGA Tour to tell it in a way that was true and fair and journalistic, I give a lot of credit to the PGA Tour for sort of, maybe holding their nose as they watch this and see what that really dramatic moment looked like from the inside with their top players.
Rickie Fowler, of course, is one of the most telegenic stars on the PGA Tour, Chad, and has been for years, even during a dark period where he went a few years kind of searching for it, not winning. Rickie, of course, returned to the winner's circle in emotional fashion in Detroit at the Rocket Mortgage Classic last summer. Is that a big part of season two?
It's a huge part of season two, and Rickie, to his credit, was one of the first players to say yes to Full Swing. I mean, in 2019. I mean, he's been a part of this show for as long as it's been an idea that we've had. And so we filmed with Rickie all last year before, for season one. We had to make the difficult call to let him know that he wasn't actually making it into season one, despite all the access he had given us and his family had given us, and we knew he was trending in the right direction. He started with working with Butch Harmon again, and it felt like he was going to have his big ending. And we called his team and said, listen, like, if you trust us, you keep leaning in. Like, we've got 90% of an episode here, but we're just waiting for the ending. And so you get to see a real 2-year arc for Rickie Fowler, going from, I believe when we started filming with him, he was like 165th in the world or something up there, in that range. Have him come all the way back to make the Ryder Cup team, to get back in the winner's circle, to almost, get himself in the final group at a U.S. Open and feel the entire U.S. Open crowd sort of behind him. It was an electrifying moment. And to have that putt finally fall in Detroit, the relief and the release of like all this emotion. If you don't tear up a little bit, watching that story, then, might want to get that checked out, brother, because it's a powerful, powerful story. And Rickie he's so honest. I think I think people feel like they know Rickie Fowler because they see him on television, they see the commercials, they've seen him on social media, but he's so real with us, and the access we had to him just brings you inside that world and inside his world. And his wife Allison is just spectacular, and the willingness for them to really be real with us and to open up and to let us into their lives and feel that weight of the pressure that he was under, and the pressure the whole family was under, frankly, to have that all kind of, the clouds part on that in one glorious Sunday in Detroit was just like, you can't script it.
Well, we're all hopeful there is a season three, Chad. And assuming there is, you might want to reach out to Jake Knapp and his team because that dude has a story to tell.
I got to tell you, it's like the second coming of the Big Easy. The Jake Knapp's been so fun to watch. We saw him out at Torrey, and he's just like, that kid hits it. I mean, I've never seen anybody, more effortlessly hit it, hit 185, 186 mile an hour ball speed on his little fairway finder. So the guy's an incredible talent, obviously breakthrough winner, great story, former bouncer. This is the beauty of the PGA Tour and its ability to kind of bring people up. And obviously coming out of the Korn Ferry Tour and that development and that whole class, actually, I think has really held themselves to a very high standard at the beginning part of the season. And so I did tweet at Jake Knapp and said to have his agent call me. So if we are lucky enough to continue to make it in this show, I think, there might be a part for Jake Knapp to play.
All 8 episodes of season 2 of Full Swing on Netflix will be released on Wednesday of the Arnold Palmer Invitational. That's Wednesday, March 6th, the second stop of the Florida Swing. Chad Mumm is the executive producer with Vox Media, the folks that produced season 1 and season 2. Congratulations on all the success, and thanks for hanging for a few moments today, Chad.
No, really loved it, and hope you guys all enjoy.